Journeys Through SpaceTime by James Talisman. Chapter 9, Taking a Stand Has Consequences Part 2. Royal City of the Critonian Empire. What have I done? Did I make the right choices? Perhaps I should have just let things be as they were. What makes me react so swiftly without considering the consequences when I see injustice? Pondered Cassius as he sat in the cell that night with the other slaves. I need to quiet my mind like Master Jedivan taught me, so I can try to get the answers I seek. It has been difficult to do that these last few days, but I must try, thought Cassius as he worked to clear his mind of all thoughts and find the peace within. Removing all the worrying thoughts swirling through his head, Cassius finally started to feel some peace inside. Now that his mind was completely void of his own troubling thoughts, Cassius heard the words of his master speak to him. So it would seem that you have created some trouble for yourself, my young apprentice. You react so swiftly because your soul is good, and it cannot tolerate inequity in any form. I think it is best that we continue this conversation face to face. Please move toward the light in your mind using your conscious awareness. Cassius did as his master requested, and instantly Cassius was face to face with Master Jedivan on the hillside overlooking the city below. How is this possible, and it is even daylight? A surprised Cassius asked his master. Our minds have joined in the void. I created this setting to make you feel more at home and relaxed, answered Master Jedivan. In truth, your physical body is still in the cell with the others. Due to your situation, I feel it is prudent that you continue with the lessons we have started. The best time to do this will be at night, so your physical body can get rest. Then you can apply what you learned during the day. This is amazing, Master. I was starting to get very concerned, but I feel better now that I am here with you. You will have some tough trials and decisions to face in the near future. We should begin your next lesson now, spoke Master Jedivan. After what felt like days of training with Master Jedivan, Cassius awoke in the cell just as the sun was starting to shine some light into the opening above. Wake up, you mangy slaves. There is much work to get done this day. The guards will bring some gruel to eat. Then you all will be escorted to the arena for training, growled the training master through the opening. Cassius and the rest of the slaves had to quickly eat the soggy, tasteless mixture in the wooden bowls with their fingers, as the guards yelled for them to get ready for training. The sun was already high in the sky as Cassius and the rest were escorted out to the arena's main battlegrounds. The smell of blood still lingered in the air from the mock battles and fights performed a couple days before. You all are the newest slaves and will fight each other to the death as we reenact our proudest battles. Only a few of you will survive the training and the first battles. Those who survive these first battles can then call yourselves crocinators for as long as you remain alive. Now each of you grab one of those wooden swords and pair up. We will begin the initial sword training exercises before we proceed with ability testing, yelled the training master. As a former member of the Critonian Empire's elite guard, Cassius' sword skills were already far above most his fellow slave warriors. Even most of the captured foreign fighters from recent battles could not match the fighting prowess of Cassius as he defeated each warrior pitted against him. At midday, the training master told the slaves to go get some water. As Cassius and the others took turns drawing water from the cistern, he spotted the training master speaking with someone wearing the clothing of the upper elite. My lord has a great interest in the slave called Cassius. Do you know of the one I speak of? Asked the man dressed in a clean red robe, with the insignia of the House of Soratan stitched into the fabric just above his heart. I know of whom you speak of. What do you want of this slave? Growled the training master. This slave has caused financial problems for Lord Soratan. He would like this slave to pay for his transgressions. Lord Soratan will pay a large tribute to anyone willing to make this happen, spoke the robed man. I can make that happen, but payment must be discreet, said the training master in a low voice. The robed man nodded to the training master, before turning and leaving the Colosseum's battlefield. "I wonder who that man was and what was he discussing with the training master," thought Cassius as he watched the man walk away. Still looking towards the training master, Cassius watched as he walked over to a group of foreign soldier slaves and began talking with them. Soon a horn sounded, and all the slaves began to assemble around the training master to start the afternoon's training session. After some initial training demonstrations, the slaves again paired up to practice the most recent lessons. The current slave paired with Cassius was not a warrior, and his sword skills showed that. Concerned this slave would get slaughtered during his first real battle in the stadium, Cassius began to try and teach the slave some defensive and offensive moves with the wooden sword. Grateful for the help, Cassius' opponent nodded his thanks to Cassius and spoke quietly the words, "Thank you, sir, for sharing your knowledge. There are others like myself who could benefit from your command of the fighting arts. I will do what I can to help, but you all must learn these skills being taught as well as possible. Your very lives will depend on that," whispered Cassius to the man. A short while later, one of the foreign soldiers came up to Cassius' opponent and pushed him out of the way. "The training master wants me to take this spot now," growled the former soldier as he prepared to attack Cassius. Cassius quickly countered the blow coming at his shoulder, and as Cassius spun around, his wooden weapon struck the soldier's side with a solid strike. The foreign fighter groaned loudly as the wooden sword struck him. "I should teach this one a lesson," thought Cassius as he prepared to deliver another blow to his opponent. Just as he was about to deliver another strike, Cassius saw out of the corner of his eye 5 more of the foreign soldiers' former troop members running towards him with their wooden swords drawn. Seeing the others coming at him made Cassius halt his next strike and move back into a defensive position. His current opponent and 2 of the other foreign soldiers immediately charged. Cassius was able to counter the first 2 sword strikes at his body, but the third strike landed hard against his shoulder. As immense pain ran through his shoulder muscles, he felt another blow strike his back. By this point, the other 2 fighters had flanked Cassius and were swinging hard wooden swords against his back and side. Cassius valiantly defended against the 6 attackers, but their powerful strikes on his body were making it almost impossible to concentrate. Dropping to the ground from the onslaught of strikes, Cassius knew he would need to do something fast before he was knocked unconscious or worse. Time seemed to stand still as Cassius calmed his thoughts and entered the void of his mind. Once in the void, he reviewed the important lesson Master Jedivan had just taught him during their training session the night before. "You have been learning well, young apprentice. Remember how I have been teaching that everything is part of the one that is all. This important concept means that even time itself can be controlled from within. Once you have reached the void of your mind and have connected with the energy of the universal substance, you can intend for time to either slow down or speed up." Just as he had done the night before during his virtual training session with Master Jedivan, Cassius intended for time to slow down within his inner reality. While the outside time remained normal, he now saw everything in slow motion. Observing both his own body and those of the 6 foreign warriors about to attack once again, Cassius watched as his other self started to counter the wooden swords with his own weapon and then systematically strike each of the foreign soldiers in vital areas throughout their bodies. In amazement, Cassius continued to watch as each attacker was subdued and quickly knocked out from the vicious blows raining down on each of them. While observing the fight between himself and the 6 attackers in slow motion, Cassius was able to watch as each precise strike hit its target. On the outside of Cassius' mind, the fight between the former elite guardsman and the 6 former foreign soldiers only lasted 20 seconds at most. The training master and the other slaves watched in amazement as Cassius and his sword vanquished the opposing attackers in mere seconds. Bringing his mind back to normal reality, he looked around to see 6 bodies lying unconscious on the ground. Still in awe of what had just occurred, the other slave warriors began to clap for Cassius. "Stop that, you mangy slaves, or there will be no food tonight." Guards, escort these slaves back to their cells and see that those other worthless slaves get dragged back to their cells as well, growled the training master as he began to turn and walk away. Even though he was bruised and bleeding from the fight, Cassius was both amazed and thankful that the master's lesson had saved his life this day. Later, as he walked from the dining hall to his quarters, the training master sensed a presence in the shadows. Pulling his weapon, he growled, "Show yourself, you maggot, or I will chase you down and disembowel you." "Relax, it is just me. I have come to make payment as promised," said the somewhat startled red-robed man from earlier. "He is still alive," said the training master. "My lord is grateful for your effort. He understands some things do not always work out as planned, but there are always more opportunities to be successful." The robed man pulled out a pouch from inside his robe and handed it to the grizzled warrior standing before him in the darkness. "My lord would like another opportunity to set things right with the slave, who saw fit to get entangled in his private business affairs. We have a plan if you are still interested in helping see proper justice served in this matter." Back in his cell, Cassius reviewed the afternoon event in his mind. "It appears someone wants my life. I must meet again with Master Jedivan this night to gain understanding and continue with my training," thought Cassius as he finished the last of his meal. Just as he was taking his last bite of food, Cassius heard the screams of women in the distance. "Do you know what that is about?" he asked the slave he had helped train earlier. "Those sounds are coming from the quarters of the one called Hulkatan. Because no one has ever defeated this barbarian, he has been given special considerations and gifts to keep him fighting," answered the slave warrior in training. "I know of this savage fighter. I saw him kill a man just a few days ago. He is the hugest man I have ever seen. His eyes convey death." Nodding at Cassius' words, the slave Tinus spoke again. "Rumor says that for anyone who can defeat this warrior monster, their freedom will be the reward. Then that is what I must do." Looking at Cassius like he was crazy, Tinus just laughed and said, "Good luck with that, my friend. Do you have any last wishes you would like conveyed to your loved ones?" "I have no family or loved ones. My fidelity now is only to the downtrodden of this world," said Cassius as he looked sternly ahead with conviction. Once everyone else had gone to sleep in the cell, Cassius began to once again quiet his mind of all thought, and center his awareness on the void of his mind. Opening his eyes, he was once again on the hillside overlooking the city below. "So you have found this place on your own. You are learning well, my young apprentice," spoke Master Jedivan as he walked up to Cassius and patted him on the back. "I have many questions, Master." "I suppose you do, young warrior. Please tell me your questions and concerns." "Earlier today, during my fight with the foreign soldiers, I seemed to be able to observe myself fighting these men from a distance. Strangely, it also allowed me to observe the fight from all sides at once." Acknowledging Cassius' words, Master Jedivan said, "As I have mentioned numerous times, true reality is far more interesting and malleable than one could even imagine. Your observer self appeared because the situation warranted it. Due to your intention to slow down time and your unique vantage point during the battle, you were all but assured victory." Sensing another concern, the master added, "You are concerned about fighting the savage brute called Hulkatan. That is indeed understandable. This basically soulless being is a most formidable opponent. It will take all your will and cunning to defeat such a monster. Let us begin your next lesson so your intention is successful." Training continued in the arena's battlefield for Cassius and the rest of the slave warriors over the next few days. Mock battles were practiced, and more sword-to-sword combat drills were engaged to prepare everyone for the upcoming main event. Each night, Cassius continued his virtual training with Master Jedivan. On the evening before the main event, the training master called everyone over to speak some words. "Tomorrow you will all face your first actual battles in this very arena. Many of you will not be alive by day's end. I recommend each one of you consult with whatever God you believe in, and make any amends needed to ensure passage to the next life." As they were being escorted back to their cells, each slave solemnly contemplated the training master's words. "I am very afraid tomorrow will be my last day in this world," Tinus admitted, as he and Cassius waited for the evening meal of gruel and bread. In truth, Cassius was concerned for the man's future as well, but felt it best to provide some words of encouragement. "You have been learning well. Try to stay close to me tomorrow and I will do my best to keep you safe." "Thank you, Cassius. Now let us give thanks for this meal we are about to partake in," said Tinus before bowing his head in prayer. That night during his training session with Master Jedivan, Cassius listened intently as the master said, "Cassius, you have been learning these lessons well. You are an excellent warrior and your fighting skills are unmatched. As you know, you always have the power inside to control most of your outer reality. More than your physical abilities, it will be control of your inner world that will be of most value to you. No matter the difficulty you face, always remember to look inside for the answers. Your inner intuition will always guide you in any endeavor." Feeling grateful for Master Jedivan's encouraging words, Cassius said, "Thank you, Master, for all your guidance. You have taught me things I could not have even imagined possible before. My intent is to use all that I have learned to help those in need." That intention is a noble one. Let it burn inside you to give you strength, a strong will, and the power to accomplish your deepest desires. Now let us begin your next lesson. As dawn came, the guards brought the morning meal and told the slaves to eat quickly, for they would be back soon to take them out to the Colosseum's battlefield, to prepare for the day's upcoming events. With midday approaching, the arena was now starting to fill up with spectators who came to see the gory battles soon to ensue in the open space below. Hearing the roar of the people in the stands grow louder, Cassius calmed his mind and eliminated all thoughts as he prepared to enter the void. Inside the void, he began to see scenes flash by of the day's events as they would most likely unfold. From this vantage point, Cassius knew what to expect and what he must do. After a short while, the horn sounded to let everyone know that the first battle enactment was about to begin. The roar of the crowd began to subside as anticipation for the first bloody battle of the day drifted through the stands. Shortly after, the horn signaling commencement of the first battle sounded. "Get out there and perform valiantly for your empire, you mangy slaves," yelled the training master, as each slave was handed a steel sword just before entering the arena's battlefield. When Cassius got to the sword handler, a wooden sword was thrust at him. Shaking his head in disbelief, Cassius grabbed the wooden weapon and ran out to get into position for the battle reenactment. Lining up as one of the Critonian Empire's elite guard as had been practiced over the last few days, Cassius was surprised to hear the words, "The training master wants me to replace you. You are to be one of the foreign invaders," come from one of the foreign soldiers he had battled just days before. Cassius looked towards the training master for confirmation and found the grizzled warrior shaking his head in agreement and waving at Cassius to change positions. Realizing his new predicament, Cassius steeled himself for what was about to come. "I must be strong and calm if I am to survive this," thought Cassius as he reviewed in his mind all he had been taught, and what he had seen just a short time ago. Soon, the battle began as chariots raced around the Colosseum's battlefield and the slave warriors began to fight in earnest for their very lives. Even though he wielded only a wooden sword, Cassius was able to defend himself against the onslaught of sharpened steel swords swung at him from all directions. "I will not be able to keep this up forever. I must use what I have been taught to try and overcome these attackers," thought Cassius, as he watched the same group of foreign soldiers from the other day advance on his position. Cassius quickly closed his eyes and removed all thoughts from his mind before entering the void of all possibilities. From the void, he made the intention of slowing down time and requested his observer self to appear once more. Immediately, Cassius felt his observer self soar up above the battle, like the winged predators of his world. With the acute eyesight of the Hawkarian, he was able to see every detail of the fight between himself and the oncoming soldiers. As his viewpoint continuously changed from his physical self to his observer self, Cassius was able to strike each of his attackers with precise blows to vital nerves and internal organ locations throughout each of the soldiers' bodies as his enemies soon began to fall to the ground. As before, what seemed like a long time for him was only approximately 30 seconds in normal time. The stadium crowd went wild as they watched this spectacle unfold on the battlefield below. Seeing all the slave warriors lying on the ground, many from the huge crowd in the stands began to chant, "Where is the blood? Where is the blood?" Returning to normal reality, Cassius watched as his fellow foreign soldiers run over to the 6 men lying on the ground, and plunge their sharpened steel swords into each of the attackers. A couple of the 6 men who tried to get up off the ground soon lost their heads as they attempted to get to their feet. As the blood flew in all directions, the crowd of spectators roared in approval. Seeing the chaos that had just ensued and realizing that the foreign soldiers had actually defeated the Critonian Empire's elite guard in this mock battle, the now enraged training master yelled to his guards to round up the remaining slaves and equipment on the battlefield so they could prepare for the next reenactment. As the remaining slaves waited in the cell for the next battle reenactment, a guard came to the cell and told Cassius the training master had demanded his presence. Cassius stood in front of the former crocinator and head trainer for the slave fighters. The training master looked at him perplexed. "You have become very hard to kill, slave. What am I to do with you?" Cassius gazed at the old warrior questioningly. "Rumor has it that anyone who defeats the brute called Hulkatan will obtain freedom as the reward. Is this true?" The training master's eyes opened wide as he contemplated Cassius' words. "Maybe I can still get this man killed and receive an extra tribute from Lord Soratan." The former crocinator nodded. "Then I ask that I get the opportunity to fight the monster this day. I also request that the slave called Tinus be allowed freedom as well if I succeed." "Very well, slave, but if you die, the other slave dies as well. I will make the arrangements now. You and Tinus will be exempt from fighting in any more battles. You will face Hulkatan in the final fight of the day." Sitting in the cell with Tinus, Cassius could hear the roars from the bloodthirsty crowd as more slave warriors met death and dismemberment fighting for their very lives. Tinus looked at Cassius and said, "Thank you, friend, for allowing me at least a little while longer to live in this world. What can I do to help you in this near impossible endeavor you are about to partake in?" "There is nothing you can do for me but maybe pray to your God for my salvation and possible victory. Now I must prepare my mind for what is to come," replied Cassius. Inside, Tinus felt both his new friend and his own death were imminent, but he nodded and said, "I will indeed pray for you, friend. My God is a powerful God who can help you face this monster." Cassius began to meditate to gain wisdom and strength for the upcoming battle with the savage brute called Hulkatan. As the midday sun began to lower in the sky, the final event for the day was coming up fast. "Get up, slaves, it is time to face the savage warrior king," called out the guards as they unlocked the cell to escort Cassius and Tinus to the preparation area. For this grand battle, the fighters could wear some gear to protect vital areas. After Cassius selected the armor he wished to use, Tinus helped his friend put on the protective garments. Soon, the horn sounded for the final blood spectacle of the day. The crowd roared loudly as the humongous beast called Hulkatan walked out onto the battlefield below. Once at the center of the battlefield, Hulkatan raised both fists in the air and roared a guttural sound that sent chills down the spine of many of the spectators far up in the stands. At almost 8 feet tall with huge bulging muscles throughout his enormous frame and numerous scars zigzagging all over his face and body, the brutish warrior from the Thessalutian province indeed looked like a monster. While inside, Cassius was beginning to have doubts about his decision. He still managed to say to the sword handler, "It will be good of you to give me a proper weapon this time." While the wooden weapon worked fine last time, it would be nice to try something new for this battle. Cassius smiled as a razor-sharp steel sword was thrust out to him. Grabbing the sword, the former elite guardsman swung the weapon around to get a feel for its weight and balance. Cassius walked out onto the battlefield. The crowd roared with laughter at the thought of this average-size man taking on the huge savage beast, standing in the middle of the Colosseum's battlefield. Moving closer to the huge warrior standing before him, Cassius' gut tightened as he contemplated his fate. Fear began to swell up inside. I must not let my fear overcome me. I need to remember my lessons. I will need all my strength and will to defeat this beast, thought Cassius as he walked closer to the massive warrior standing at the middle of the battlefield. Seeing his latest opponent, the brute called Hulkatan began to roar with laughter. The monster's laughter incited the bloodthirsty crowd to roar with laughter as well. You are so puny. I will just kill you quickly and get back to the girls waiting for me, shouted Hulkatan as Cassius stopped about 20 yards from him. You are so scrawny, I will not even need to use my weapon to kill you. I will just use my bare hands to crush the life out of you. While Cassius was very muscular and stood 6 feet, he looked like a child as he stood face to face with the savage brute from the Thessalian province. Up in the stands, Maxillum shouted, "Hey, is that not Cassius standing before Hulkatan? So the coward traitor to the Critonian Empire is about to meet his fate, it seems. You should heed your words, fool. Cassius has more inner strength than any of us. I, for one, will put my faith in my friend over the brute," growled Brutus even as he felt inside that his closest friend was most likely to die at the hands of the monster below. Back on the battlefield, Cassius closed his eyes and worked diligently to remove all worrying thoughts from his mind as he prepared to enter the void. Once in the void, he made the intention for time to slow down on the inside, and then directed all the energy he could capture from the beast and the immediate surroundings to fill his body. As powerful energy now filled his body and mind, Cassius raced toward the giant to begin the precise moves he had already played out in his mind many times during his recent meditations. Cassius watched in slow motion as each sword strike tore into the massive warrior's flesh at vital areas throughout the giant's body. The incredible onslaught of sword cuts caught the beast by surprise as he dropped to his knees. The huge crowd went silent as they watched the almost unnatural sword display from Cassius bring the huge warrior down. Brutus too was stunned as he observed his friend performing almost magical moves against the giant. While the sword cuts were deep, the massive warrior's skin was so thick and hard that the cuts did not go in deep enough to strike vital organs as Cassius intended. Seeing that the monster was shaken but not critically injured, Cassius thought to himself, I will need to remove this beast's head if I am to survive this. Still viewing the outside world in slow motion, Cassius saw the gigantic warrior get up in slow motion and charge towards him. In the few seconds it took the giant to reach him, he had used the slower time in his mind to make another intention to shield against the huge warrior's attack, just before Hulkutan's huge and extremely muscular leg slammed into Cassius's side and sent him flying through the air. The Colosseum crowd roared in approval as they watched Cassius sail through the air and hit hard on the battlefield below. Lying on the arena's battlefield almost unconscious, he could not remember ever being struck so powerfully by anyone or anything. If he had not intended the shielding just before the kick to his side, Cassius was certain he would not have survived the blow. Using all the strength and will he could muster, Cassius got back to his feet and retrieved his sword. Seeing the little man get up from his kick enraged Hulkatan even more as he once again charged towards Cassius. Still seeing everything in slow motion allowed Cassius to dodge the giant's advance as he swung his sword 180 degrees around to strike Hulkutan's right rear leg just above the heel. This time the cut sliced into the giant's tendons as the huge beast dropped to the ground. A guttural roar came out of Hulkatan as he staggered to his feet and pulled a huge broadsword from his belt. As the huge beast limped towards Cassius with his sword drawn, Cassius closed his eyes once more and intended the crowd's energy to fill his mind and body with all the power it contained. Feeling immense power now overflowing within, Cassius returned his mind to normal speed and jumped with all his might as the massive giant continued to charge towards him. Swinging his body and sword with all the power he could muster, Cassius used his sword to slash straight through the giant's neck. Hulkutan's body crumbled to the ground as his enormous head landed with a thud, 20 feet away. The arena's crowd all jumped to their feet and cheered as they watched the huge beast fall to the ground with blood pouring and squirting from where his head once was. Physically and mentally exhausted, Cassius still managed to raise his sword in victory as the crowd began to chant, "Release the crocinator! Release the crocinator!" Brutus roared, "Release the crocinator," as he watched his friend celebrate his victory below. As promised, Cassius was given his freedom. As he turned from the training master to walk out of the Colosseum, the training master said, "Crocinator, here is something to get you started again." The old warrior threw the bag of coins he had received the other night towards Cassius. "Thank you, and thank you for the life lessons," said Cassius as he caught the heavy bag. Outside the Colosseum, Brutus rushed over when he spotted his friend walking away from the stadium. "You have once again done the impossible, my friend. We should celebrate." "A hard cider does sound really good right now," Cassius agreed as they both walked towards the pub.